Hi everyone, and welcome back to the pregnancy vlog. So I realized that we haven't talked much about baby names, and it's just kind of a light discussion around the house. I think my husband has a hard time putting a name to a baby that isn't born yet, and he's afraid he's going to jinx it, and that, you know, maybe some medical problem's going to come up or something, and then if you end up losing your baby, then for him it's just tough to have that separation. So we tend to wait until the last minute to name any of our kids, and Bethany, as I've said before, is the only one who's had a name during pregnancy, and it might just partly be indecision and wanting to see what the baby's going to look like before we can place a name to him. So I thought I would share with you some of the names we like, and I know some of them, my husband is just adamant, no, we're not going to use them, but they're names I like. And then he has names that he likes that I have on the list that I refuse to use. One of those being Forrest. We're not Russian in any way, and to me it just seems too gruff of a name for a little baby. It'd be fine if you're an old man or, you know, in another region other than where we're from. It's like southern names, you know, there's not a bunch of Silases in Michigan, say. So one of the names I told you that I liked before was Noah, and that was from the movie The Notebook, which I really enjoyed watching, by the way. And Brock is a name that I have only met 2 Brocks in my life, and there's a good association and a bad association. Either way, my husband just said no, he didn't like that. I told you before, the boys like the name Magnus. It's too close to Maximus and Murdoch, and Maximus means greatest, Magnus means great. So, as I said before, we're also into knowing the meanings of the baby's name, because I don't want to like burden them with something that's terrible. I really like the name Guy, and we have a habit of calling everyone Guy and Buddy in our family anyway, so he's going to end up getting called Guy even if I don't end up using it. So we had a dog named Buddy, and my oldest son got called Buddy a lot by his grandpa, and still does, and now it's Little Buddy, you know, and things like that for the smaller guys. So Trey gets called Little Buddy all the time. A family name is Dale. We all agreed and liked that, and it had a lot of good, strong meanings for standing up for like injustice and being good with like finances, and in general it's a solid name, and it's not one that you hear a lot. And we're thinking both first names and middle names depending on how we're going to use it. Another one I really liked was the name Fletcher, and for some reason I just kept thinking Fletch Lives, the movie with Chevy Chase. So I liked it, but then when I kind of started thinking about that, I thought, it's hard to disassociate, like, for a reason that you don't like a name, and this is going to be the name that you call your baby. Murdoch was really, really hard for me to introduce him to people as Murdoch as a baby, and now it just fits him, and, you know, I just don't see him as anybody else. Matthias is one that we've liked over the years through all the pregnancies, and for different reasons just haven't used it. I went to school with very few Matts, and I think Matt was a common name, or Matthew, in maybe, you know, the time period that I was born in the 70s. So I didn't want him to be shortened down and just be called Matt. And Matthew doesn't really, Matthew as a whole name was fine for me, so I like that. But then it took away from the whole idea of naming him Matthias. I told you before I like the name Grayson. My husband says no. because Grayson means gray-haired, and our last name is Graham, and Graham means gray castle. So he said, that's too much gray with all the meanings and everything together. But I really liked Grayson a lot. Lincoln is another old one that we liked a lot. And we've actually had that name picked out since we were pregnant with Jack, and Jack is now 11. So that's a possibility, but again, I think it's being used more in the last year or two. And whenever my husband thinks that something is trendy, or trending, then he just refuses. For a while there, everyone was wearing North Face jackets, and he walks around teasing about that all the time now too. So, brand names and things like that, he veers away from. So for that purpose, I think we won't be using that again. George is one of the names that we like. That was an old-fashioned solid name, good for a boy. Geo is good for short. And it's just simple. There's not a lot of Georges. So I could picture a little boy, you know, at the apple orchard wearing a pretty gray sweater and just, you know, very Scottish or Irish, you know, in a way. Yet very American. We also found out that George means farmer. So Trey is leaning towards that name. The boys, of course, wanted to name him George Magnus, meaning great farmer. So there is some agreement on that. Quinn is another name that I liked a lot, and my husband didn't. I remember it was either Scottish or Irish, and it's just kind of, it could be boy or girl, and I think would make a good girl name. Maybe not so much a boy name, but again, I could see a little boy dressed in an apple orchard in a nice gray sweater having pictures done. I have another one on my board, and I rubbed it on my shirt when I was coming out, and I can't read it. Oh, Boris. No, Brutus. Brutus is a name that he liked, and Bruno. And every time I kept thinking of Brutus, I kept thinking Brutus from Popeye, from when I was a kid, and he was, you know, a villain bad guy, and he was always trying to take olive oil away from him. And then Bruno, I keep thinking of Bruno Mars, and so I looked it up. I don't know any of his music, but I found out Bruno Mars is just his stage name, and I believe it said he was like of Hispanic heritage. So you know how with the straight stage names they go, they don't really. It's like Charlie Sheen. I forget what his real name is, but so I kept associating Bruno with Bruno Mars and decided that I didn't want to give my kid like a stage name. And it also came up like a German meaning of brown. So that was just kind of dull-ish. So I don't want anything terribly exciting, but those are some ideas of some names that we have picked out. I believe that was 14. I think there's some keepers on the list, and we're still looking. We still have a few weeks left. So I am open to suggestions if there's a family name. And that's been a hard thing for me too, because my brother has lots of sons, and he has used family names and other names that I like because he has so many boys that it kind of leaves me with, like, John hasn't been used in our family. And I had a Grandpa John. I didn't really want to go on that because it's my brother's name and my grandpa's name. So having that as a living relative, I figured it would be confusing, like to the little kids to say, you know, or to my family, John did this or John did that, because they're going to think I'm talking about my brother. So there's that. And my brother used my dad's name, and yeah, I've got two uncles, and they have unusual names. So they're not names that I want to use again, just because they're my uncle's names. So yeah, I don't have a lot of male family names to be able to use without going way back. And like my husband liked the name Albert, which was, I believe, his grandfather's middle name and his great-grandfather's name. Max was his great-great-grandfather's name, which Maximus and Max, they just kind of play off each other, so we can't use that. But we're coming along. We have a board or like a name wall that we do in the kids' bedroom. And I was kind of thinking of doing it up like a jigsaw puzzle. So I repainted all the kids' letters. I just recently painted their bedroom. So when we get it all complete, I still got to do the curtains and the bed skirts. Then I can maybe show you what I mean about making like a jigsaw puzzle. But they each have wooden letters with their name. And I can tie them all into each other so that it looks like, I said jigsaw puzzle, I meant crossword puzzle. So I can post them all on the wall to look like a crossword puzzle. And if it works out, I could put this baby's name in with it also. Or I could just line them up by age, or everyone has it by their bed, different things like that. So in the past, because we had all 4 colors of the walls, 4 walls a different color, every child had their own wall. That was the color they picked, and their name was on their wall, and any artwork that they drew and things like that. But because right now they're not ready for the move to the upstairs, that's got a long ways to go on it, they basically have their beds set up in a way that it's like 2 twin-size beds along one wall, and then 2 twin-size beds next to that to make like a king-size bed. So it's just one big, huge sleeping pile every night, and everyone just kind of cuddles together and has a good time. So putting names on separate walls kind of divides it up, and with a 5th baby in the house, I can't really do that, but I have a real big open space on 2 walls that I could kind of put them together. Anyways, I will do a separate video of that showing you once I get that complete, I guess, the idea that I'm thinking of with that. So those are the baby names we're thinking of, everybody. Comment, leave suggestions. I always like that. And I will always get back to you.